He laughed when she pulled my hair. Sophia Bennett sobbed, clutching her 7-month pregnant belly on the private jet soaring from New York to Los Angeles. Her husband, Julian, and his mistress, Chloe, turned the luxurious cabin into a stage for betrayal, right in front of powerful investors. Their cruel laughter cut like a blade, but Sophia had no idea a hero was watching. This isn't just a story of humiliation, it's a journey of rising up to reclaim justice. If you miss this, you'll regret it forever. Watch how Sophia changes everything. The private jet sliced through the inky night sky, its engines humming a deceptive lullaby as it soared from New York to Los Angeles. Inside the lavish cabin, soft amber lights bathed the polished walnut tables and plush leather seats in a golden glow, while crystal glasses clinked with the finest Napa Valley wine. It was the kind of scene you'd catch in a Hollywood blockbuster, glamour oozing from every corner, the air thick with wealth and ambition. But for Sophia Bennett, 7 months pregnant and tucked into the farthest corner of the cabin, this luxury was a gilded cage, each detail a cruel reminder of her crumbling world. Her hands, trembling slightly, cradled her swollen belly, as if shielding her unborn child from the storm brewing just a few feet away. Across the narrow aisle, her husband, Julian Bennett, Wall Street's golden boy, lounged with the ease of a man who owned the world. His tailored suit was just rumpled enough to scream effortless charm, and his hand lazily swirled a glass of ruby red wine, catching the light like a taunting jewel. His lips curled into a smug grin, the kind that could sell sand in a desert. Beside him, Chloe Evans, his mistress, was a vision in a scarlet dress that hugged her curves like a second skin, screaming, "Look at me," louder than a Times Square billboard. Her manicured nails, painted a predatory crimson, grazed Julian's arm with a familiarity that cut deeper than words. Every so often, she leaned in, her glossy lips brushing his ear, whispering something that sparked a loud, carefree laugh from him. It wasn't just intimacy, it was a performance, a deliberate dagger aimed straight at Sophia's heart. Sophia's breath hitched, her chest tightening as she felt the weight of every gaze in the cabin. The investors, clad in their bespoke suits, shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between their phones and the drama unfolding before them. The flight attendants, trained to be invisible, exchanged fleeting glances, their professionalism barely masking their shock. Everyone knew Sophia was Julian's wife, the woman carrying his child. Yet here she was, reduced to a silent spectator in her own marriage, forced to watch her husband parade his infidelity like a trophy. Chloe's eyes flicked toward Sophia, sharp and triumphant, like a cat toying with a wounded bird. Each glance was a calculated jab, a reminder that Sophia's place in Julian's world had been usurped by someone younger, bolder, and unapologetically cruel. Sophia's fingers tightened around the armrest, her knuckles whitening as she fought, the tears burning behind her eyes. Crying would only fuel Chloe's victory, and she refused to give her that satisfaction. But the humiliation was a living thing, coiling around her heart, squeezing until she could barely breathe. She pressed a hand to her belly, feeling a gentle kick from her baby, a tiny spark of life that grounded her in the chaos. "I'm here, my love," she whispered, her voice barely audible, a fragile promise to the child who was her only anchor. But deep down, a voice gnawed at her, a voice that whispered she was sinking, drowning in a sea of humiliation she couldn't escape. Julian's laughter rang out again, a sound so carefree it felt like a slap. He leaned back, his tie loosened just enough to hint at rebellion, and raised his glass in a mock toast, his eyes skimming past Sophia as if she were invisible. The irony wasn't lost on her. This was the man who'd once knelt before her in a Central Park gazebo, promising forever with a diamond that sparkled like his vows. Now, those vows were as hollow as the champagne flutes littering the cabin. Sophia's mind flickered to the early days' late-night talks in their Brooklyn loft, dreaming of a future where they'd conquer the world together. She'd been his rock, the one who believed in him when his startup teetered on the edge of collapse. She'd traded her own ambitions for his, thinking love was worth the sacrifice. And this was her reward, a front-row seat to her own betrayal, played out at 30,000 feet for an audience of strangers. Chloe's laugh cut through the air again, high and sharp like nails on a chalkboard. She tossed her hair, the movement practiced, performative, as if she knew every eye was on her. Sophia caught a whiff of her perfume, something expensive and cloying, like overripe fruit. It was the scent of victory, of a woman who'd claimed what wasn't hers and reveled in it. The investors murmured among themselves, their whispers a low hum of judgment and intrigue. One of them, a silver-haired titan from Silicon Valley, adjusted his cufflinks, his discomfort palpable. Another, younger and hungrier, smirked, as if watching a reality show unfold. Sophia's cheeks burned, the heat of humiliation creeping up her neck. She wanted to scream, to demand respect, but the weight of her pregnancy, the fear for her child, kept her silent. She shifted in her seat, the leather creaking under her, and tried to focus on the hum of the engines, the only sound that didn't mock her. But Chloe's next glance was bolder, her lips curling into a smirk that said, "You're nothing." Sophia's heart pounded, each beat a reminder of her powerlessness. She was trapped not just on this jet, but in a marriage that had become a battlefield. Julian's eyes met hers for a fleeting moment, his expression unreadable, before he turned back to Chloe, laughing at some private joke. It was a small act, but it cut deeper than any words. Sophia's fingers traced the curve of her belly, her baby's movements a quiet rebellion against the chaos. "We'll get through this," she murmured, though the words felt like a lie. The cabin, with its polished surfaces and glittering excess, was a stage, and Sophia was the unwilling star of a tragedy she hadn't written. Yet, in the midst of this betrayal, something stirred within her, a faint flicker of defiance, buried beneath the pain. She didn't know it yet, but this moment, this unbearable humiliation, was the spark that would ignite her transformation. The jet soared on, slicing through the night, but the real storm was brewing inside the cabin. Sophia's story was far from over, and the world was about to witness her rise. The humiliation choked Sophia like a noose, but the nightmare on the private jet from New York to Los Angeles was only just beginning. The air in the cabin, though cooled by air conditioning, turned stifling, as if the opulence of the leather seats and the shimmering glow of wine glasses were complicit in the cruelty. Sophia, huddled in a corner, clutched her pregnant belly, trying to make herself invisible. But Chloe Evans, her husband's mistress, had no intention of letting her fade away. With a smile sharp as a razor's edge, Chloe rose slowly, her red heels clicking on the walnut floor, each step a drumbeat proclaiming victory. She moved with the confidence of a Broadway star, fully aware that every eye in the cabin was fixed on her. Chloe paused before Sophia, her glossy lips curling into a sneer of contempt. Her gaze swept over Sophia, from her disheveled hair to her simple maternity dress, as if appraising an outdated item in a Fifth Avenue boutique. The cabin's atmosphere seemed to freeze, every sound the murmurs of investors, the clink of wine glasses swallowed by the tension. Sophia felt each heartbeat, like a bird trapped in her chest. She tried to lift her head, but Chloe's gaze, icy and brimming with arrogance, made her feel small, as if she were no longer Julian's wife, but merely a faint shadow on the fringes of his life. Without warning, Chloe reached out, her crimson nails flashing under the cabin's lights. She grabbed Sophia's hair, yanking it with vicious force. A cry of pain escaped Sophia's lips, echoing in the silent space. Tears spilled, not from the pain, but from the bitter betrayal invading every cell of her body. Her hands flew to her belly, a shield protecting her unborn child from the world's cruelty. The crowd in the cabin, investors in their expensive suits, flight attendants trained to maintain perfect smiles, froze like statues. A few shifted, the leather seats creaking, but none dared speak. Their silence was another blade, just as sharp, slicing deep into Sophia's pride. Julian, her husband, lounged in his seat, wine glass in hand, his smug grin unshaken. He sipped his wine, his eyes gliding over the scene as if watching a cheap entertainment flick. A glint sparked in his gaze, not of anger or protection, but of sick amusement, as if Sophia's pain was a gift to his ego. Chloe's act wasn't just an attack on Sophia, it was a public performance, staged to flaunt her power and Sophia's helplessness. Chloe's laugh, high and cruel, rang out like a symphony of scorn, filling the cabin, drowning out even the hum of the jet's engines. It was like the blare of a truck's horn barreling through, leaving only devastation in its wake. Sophia bit her lip, struggling to hold back the tears threatening to spill. She couldn't let Chloe see her break further, but each passing second felt like she was being stripped bare before the crowd. Memories of her early days with Julian, warm evenings in their Brooklyn apartment, sweet promises under Manhattan streetlights were now just shattered fragments, crushed by the harsh reality. She had been the woman behind Julian's success, sacrificing her own dreams to let him shine. Now, she was just an unwilling spectator, watching her husband and his mistress turn her into a laughingstock. Chloe released her grip, Sophia's hair falling messily over her shoulders, but her gaze stayed locked on Sophia, as if to etch her triumph into her soul. She turned, striding back to Julian, her walk proud like a queen who'd just claimed the throne. Julian's hand brushed Chloe's back, an intimate gesture that twisted Sophia's heart. The investors began to murmur, but none dared intervene. Julian's power on Wall Street was an impenetrable wall. A flight attendant, with a forced smile, stepped forward to pour more wine, as if normalcy could ease the tension. But nothing could hide the truth. This was a public betrayal, a deliberate attempt to crush Sophia's spirit. Sophia drew a deep breath, her hands still clutching her belly, feeling the gentle kicks of her child. It was the only spark of hope in the storm of humiliation. She whispered to herself, her voice trembling yet resolute, "We'll get through this, my love." But inside, she wasn't sure she had the strength to face what lay ahead. Chloe, with her smug smile, and Julian, with his callous indifference, had pushed her into an abyss. Yet, in the cabin's stillness, a faint glimmer stirred a premonition that this nightmare wasn't the end, and that someone, somewhere, would shatter this cruel silence. Dear audience, grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and keep listening to the story. The twists are still to come. And please drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world. Drop a 1 in the comments if you find this story gripping, so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. In the darkest moment, when humiliation and betrayal strangled Sophia's heart, a sudden ray of light tore through the stifling air of the private jet, gliding through the night sky from New York to Los Angeles. The echo of Chloe's heels still lingered. Julian's smug grin hung like a toxic cloud, but everything was abruptly halted by a voice, cold and sharp as a samurai's blade. Enough. Ethan Bennett, Julian's billionaire brother, rose slowly from the back of the cabin, his commanding presence like a general stepping out of a Hollywood epic. His eyes, icy and unrelenting, swept across the cabin, making the entire space hold its breath. This wasn't just an intervention, it was a declaration that justice had arrived. Ethan strode down the narrow aisle, each step resounding like the drumbeat of fate, shaking the arrogance of Chloe and Julian. His charcoal gray suit, tailored to perfection, hugged his tall frame, exuding authority without ostentation. His gaze locked onto Chloe, who still gripped Sophia's hair, her crimson nails flashing like blood under the cabin's lights. With a swift, precise motion, Ethan seized her wrist, his grip just firm enough to make Chloe flinch and release her hold, Sophia's hair tumbling messily over her shoulders. Chloe staggered back, her high heels wobbling like a minor actress pushed off the main stage. Sophia, tears still glistening on her cheeks, looked up at Ethan, her heart pounding with gratitude and astonishment. For the first time in this fateful night, a glimmer of hope pierced the darkness of her humiliation. Ethan didn't stop there. He turned to face Julian, his eyes sharp as a dagger slicing through his brother's smugness. Julian, still lounging in his leather seat, wine glass gleaming in his hand, suddenly seemed smaller under the towering authority of his brother. His grin froze, like a comedian realizing the audience wasn't laughing at his joke. Ethan stood tall, his broad shoulders like a fortress wall, his voice low but cutting, slicing through the air like an axe. He condemned Julian for allowing his wife, the woman carrying his child, to be attacked without lifting a finger to protect her. Ethan's words weren't just a rebuke, they were a verdict, echoing through the cabin, making the investors accustomed to Wall Street power plays sit up straight, their eyes wide with shock. The cabin, already silent after Chloe's cruel act, now felt sucked into a vacuum. The investors, with their gleaming Rolex watches and expensive smartphones, stopped their murmurs. One of them, a Manhattan real estate tycoon, unconsciously clenched his fist, as if watching a boxing match nearing its decisive blow. The flight attendants, usually gliding like ghosts with professional smiles, stood frozen, their eyes flickering between Ethan and Sophia. Even the steady hum of the jet's engines seemed to fade under the weight of this moment. Ethan wasn't just a billionaire, he was the embodiment of justice, a beacon in the storm of betrayal engulfing Sophia. Sophia, still trembling, sensed the shift in the air. Her tears still fell, but now they carried a different hue, not just pain, but awe at this unexpected defense. She clutched her pregnant belly, feeling the gentle kicks of her child, as if the baby too sensed the turning tide in its mother's fate. Ethan, with his cold exterior but eyes hiding a trace of compassion, seemed to see through her pain. He didn't just stand up for Sophia, he stood for the dignity trampled, for the values Julian and Chloe had callously discarded. His presence was like a fierce wind, blowing away the fog of humiliation, bringing a faint glow that justice still existed. But what made Sophia's heart race wasn't just Ethan's protective act, it was the instinct that he held a greater secret. The way he stood, the way he looked at Julian like a chess master certain of the final move, hinted that this wasn't a mere impulse. Ethan Bennett, the man who built a tech empire from Silicon Valley, never acted without strategy. His eyes, though cold, sparked with a fire, as if he'd been waiting for this moment for years. The investors began glancing at each other, sensing that this drama was about to turn to a new, more gripping chapter. Chloe, her once confident smile now twisted, took another step back, her sense of victory popping like a soap bubble. Julian, for the first time, looked like a loser, his wineglass trembling slightly in his hand. The storm of betrayal on the private jet from New York to Los Angeles took a sudden turn when Ethan Bennett, with eyes sharp as a blade, pulled a thick stack of documents from his glossy black briefcase and slammed it onto the walnut table in the cabin's center. The thud of the papers echoed like a gunshot, cutting through the hum of the jet's engines and silencing the entire cabin. The dim lights cast a glow on the documents, highlighting the fiery red seal on the cover, as if it were a bomb poised to detonate. Ethan stood tall, his demeanor cold yet commanding, like a prosecutor in a Hollywood courtroom, ready to topple an empire. This wasn't just an intervention, it was the moment justice began to descend, shaking the world of Julian and Chloe to its core. The documents, pages dense with numbers, were undeniable proof of Julian's financial betrayal. Ethan, with a voice low but sharp as a sword, declared his brother's crimes. Millions of dollars from the company's funds had been siphoned off, funneled into lavish vacations in Miami, glittering jewelry from Tiffany's RAI, and the ostentatious lifestyle of Chloe Evans. Each word from Ethan was a hammer blow, shattering the arrogant mask Julian had worn for years. The investors, seasoned in Wall Street's cutthroat games, instinctively sat up straighter, flipping through the documents with eyes wide in shock and fury. A Chicago real estate mogul, his silk Hermes tie gleaming, shook his head slowly, as if witnessing a car crash he couldn't look away from. A younger investor, his Apple Watch glinting, whispered to the person beside him, his voice thick with suspicion. Chloe, who just minutes before had reigned like a queen in her fiery red dress, now paled, her glossy lips pressed tight. She turned to Julian, her eyes wild with panic, like a bit-part actress realizing she'd been cut from the script. Her confidence dissolved, replaced by raw fear as she grasped that the extravagant gifts, the yacht trips in the Bahamas, were all paid for with dirty money. Julian, usually as slick as a politician, now stammered, his voice trembling like a dry leaf in the wind. He tried to deflect, waving his wineglass, but the deep red liquid sloshed over the rim like blood from a fatal wound. The arrogance that once made him untouchable was now a tattered shell, torn apart by the light of truth. Sophia, still curled up in the cabin's corner, sensed the shift in the air. Her tears had stopped, but her hands still clutched her pregnant belly, as if shielding her child from the emotional tempest. Her eyes, though still heavy with pain, now flickered with a spark of curiosity, tinged with hope. Ethan hadn't just exposed Julian's betrayal of her, he'd revealed his betrayal of the entire Bennett family and those who'd trusted him. Each word from Ethan was a blade, not only cutting into Julian, but also freeing Sophia from the cage of humiliation. She looked at him, his presence regal yet understated, and wondered why he'd chosen to stand up for her. Ethan, known as a reclusive billionaire in Silicon Valley, wasn't one to meddle in family drama, but his eyes, though cold, held a deep resolve, as if he'd been waiting for this moment for years. The flight attendants, usually invisible in their professionalism, now stood motionless, their eyes darting between Ethan and Julian. A young woman with blonde hair tied high unconsciously gripped her wine tray, as if any movement might shatter the moment. The investors began to murmur, their whispers like an undercurrent, signaling that the power game was about to shift. Chloe, sensing her isolation, stepped away from Julian, her high heels wobbling as if the cabin floor were tilting beneath her. She, whose arrogance once made her untouchable, now looked like a lost soul in the very play she'd orchestrated. Julian, left alone, seemed smaller than ever, his wine glass now just a useless prop in his hand. Sophia, though still enveloped by pain, felt a small spark ignite in her chest. Ethan hadn't just unmasked Julian, he'd given her a chance to breathe, to believe that justice wasn't just a dream. But Ethan's glance toward her seemed to hide a greater secret, a final card yet to be played. The cabin, with its twinkling lights and opulence, had become an arena where truth was claiming victory. The investors, their eyes sharp, began questioning not just Julian but the future of the Bennett empire. For the first time, Sophia felt she was no longer a victim but part of a larger story, one about to be rewritten. The private jet's cabin, suspended in the night sky from New York to Los Angeles, transformed into an arena where justice began to shine brilliantly. Ethan Bennett, with eyes sharp as a Wall Street strategist, gently placed another stack of documents on the walnut table, its golden seal gleaming under the lights like a crown awaiting its wearer. The soft sound of paper meeting wood, subtle yet heavy, rang out like a proclamation, shaking the arrogance of Julian and Chloe. Sophia, still clutching her pregnant belly in the cabin's corner, felt her heart race, as if sensing that this moment would change everything. This wasn't just a revelation, it was the flame igniting her rise, transforming her from a humiliated victim into the holder of supreme power. The documents, with their crisp white pages and bold handwriting, were the will of the Bennett family patriarch, a document with the power to shape an entire empire. Ethan, his voice low but firm as granite, declared that his and Julian's father, a Silicon Valley legend, had chosen Sophia as the primary heir of the Bennett conglomerate. Not Julian, the man who prided himself on his fame and power, but Sophia, the pregnant woman once deemed invisible by her husband. The investors, accustomed to financial shocks, leaned forward instinctively, their eyes wide as if witnessing an unexpected billion-dollar merger. A Boston finance titan, his gold-rimmed glasses glinting, flipped through the pages, his brows furrowed like he was solving a complex puzzle. A younger investor in a Silicon Valley-style untucked shirt whispered to his neighbor, his voice thick with astonishment. Sophia, trembling, reached out to touch the documents, her fingers tracing her name written in bold black ink. Each word was a confirmation, an acknowledgement she'd never dared to dream of. Julian's father, whom she'd met only a few times at lavish Hamptons parties, had seen in her what she herself had forgotten: loyalty, resilience, and dignity. Those qualities, like precious gems buried under the dust of betrayal, were now brought into the light. Sophia felt a spark flare in her chest, like a torch illuminating a long darkened path. She was no longer the wife scorned by her husband, no longer a faint shadow in this opulent cabin. She was the chosen one, the one holding the future of an empire. Julian, for the first time, stripped of his smugness, sprang from his seat, the wine glass in his hand sloshing, nearly spilling. His face flushed red, not with anger but with raw panic, like a Hollywood star caught by paparazzi in his ugliest moment. He waved his arms, trying to protest, but his trembling voice lacked its usual polish. Each attempt to deflect was like a gust of wind, meaningless against the weight of the will. Chloe, beside him, looked like a wax statue, melting. Her fiery red dress, once a symbol of arrogance, now seemed like an oversized cloak unable to hide her disarray. She stepped back, her eyes darting between Julian and Ethan, as if searching for an escape in a play where she was no longer the lead. Ethan, calm but radiating authority, stood motionless, his gaze sweeping the cabin like a director orchestrating the final scene. He needed no further words, the documents spoke for him. The flight attendants, usually masters of neutrality, couldn't hide their astonishment. A young woman unconsciously gripped her cloth tightly. The investors began to murmur, their whispers like an undercurrent, signaling Julian's downfall. Sophia, though still surrounded by the pain of earlier hours, felt a new strength seeping into her soul. She raised her head, meeting Ethan's gaze, which seemed to say she was not just a victim but the one holding power. The will wasn't just paper, it was a declaration that she was worthy, that she was the future. The cabin, with its twinkling lights and extravagance, became a stage where Sophia began to see her own worth. But the spark in her chest wasn't just recognition, it was a call to action. Ethan, his eyes hinting at a larger plan, seemed to await her response. The investors, their gazes sharp, began questioning Julian, Chloe, and the future of the Bennett empire. Sophia sensed that this moment wasn't just the end of her humiliation, it was the start of a magnificent rise. The gala at Beverly Hills sparkled like a scene from a Hollywood blockbuster, with chandeliers twinkling like stars and the clink of wine glasses ringing out like a lavish symphony. But when Sophia Bennett stepped in, draped in a sleek black dress, her eyes blazing like a fierce flame, the room fell silent, as if all air had been sucked out. No longer the quiet, trembling wife on the private jet, Sophia was now a warrior, an emblem of power and justice, ready to rewrite her story. The crowd, from movie stars to Wall Street titans, abruptly stopped talking, their eyes locked on her as if she were the star of an unmissable performance. This wasn't just a gala, it was the stage for Sophia's magnificent rise. She strode to the podium, her high heels clicking on the marble floor, each step echoing like a proclamation. In her hand was the will, its golden seal gleaming like a medal of victory. Cameras flashed, their light dancing as if to capture every moment of this fateful shift. Sophia held her head high, her softly curled hair flowing, her gaze sweeping the crowd and pausing on Julian and Chloe, the two who'd once made her a laughingstock. Julian, in a rumpled suit, looked like a forgotten bit-part actor, his face pale, his eyes frantic. Chloe, her red dress now out of place like a dated fashion piece, clung to her arrogance, but her trembling hands betrayed her. The gala's opulence, with Napa Valley wine and silk-draped tables, turned into an arena where Sophia held the flag of triumph. She raised the documents high, the light making them glow like a torch. Her voice, clear yet powerful as a California wave, resounded through the room, declaring that Julian's father had entrusted the Bennett Empire's future to her, the woman once betrayed and humiliated by her husband. Each word was a dagger, slicing deep into Julian's lies and greed, exposing him before the powerful crowd. The investors, who once bowed to Julian, now gazed at him with contempt, as if he were a fraud, unmasked. A Silicon Valley tech mogul, his Patek Philippe watch glinting, nodded slowly, as if acknowledging Sophia's resilience. A movie star, with a red carpet smile, whispered to a companion, her eyes full of admiration. Julian tried to stand, his legs wobbling like a boxer knocked out, but the crowd's applause drowned his efforts. Chloe, realizing the game was over, turned and walked away, her red heels clicking on the floor, but this time without pride, only the shame of a loser. She slipped through the crowd, eyes lowered, like a background actor exiting the stage in silence. The board of directors, standing in the corner, announced the freezing of Julian's shares, officially cutting him from the empire he thought was his. Sophia, her gaze unwavering, declared she would divorce, protect her child, her dignity, and her future. Her words weren't just a promise, they were a proclamation, echoing like an anthem in the hearts of those watching. The crowd erupted in applause, cheers rising like ocean waves, washing away the remnants of betrayal. Sophia stood there, head held high, the chandeliers casting a halo around her. She was no longer the broken wife trapped in the jet's cabin, but an emblem of rebirth, a flame that couldn't be extinguished. Memories of her humiliated days, Chloe's cruel laughter, Julian's indifference were now mere stepping stones to her victory. She looked out at the crowd, her eyes resting on Ethan, standing quietly in the corner, his subtle smile that of a strategist who'd seen the chess game end as planned. But this wasn't the end. Sophia knew her journey was just beginning. The Bennett Empire, with its Manhattan skyscrapers and billion-dollar projects in Los Angeles, now rested in her hands. She felt the weight of power, but also the immense responsibility. The crowd still clapped, cameras still flashed, but within Sophia, a new fire burned, a fire of resilience and hope. She hadn't just defeated Julian and Chloe, she'd conquered her own fears. From a forgotten wife, Sophia had risen as a symbol of justice, ready to write a new chapter for herself and her child. And you, my dear audience, brace yourselves for the next twist in this jaw-dropping story. So, before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're truly loving what I'm doing here. And drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a thrill to see who's joining us from all corners of the globe. In those long, sleepless nights of her 8th month of pregnancy, Emily Harper clutched her swollen belly, tears streaming down her face, wondering why her husband, CEO Alexander Sterling, had grown so distant, with late-night calls and vague excuses about work. She had sacrificed her career, believing wholeheartedly that love would conquer all. But that afternoon at the Galleria in Houston, pain struck like a knife. He was with his mistress, laughing intimately, buying extravagant gifts. "How long have you been sleeping with her?" Emily asked, her voice trembling, only to receive a public slap in return. That pain, perhaps you felt it too. This story will stir deep empathy in you, and the twist about a secret billionaire father will leave you regretting if you miss it. It began on a golden afternoon in Houston, where Emily Harper, 30 years old, struggled to walk on swollen feet in high heels that her husband, Alexander Sterling, CEO of Sterling Developments, insisted she wear. These designer shoes, with their sharp, glittering heels, were a constant reminder of the glamorous lifestyle Alexander demanded. But now they only made Emily feel like she was treading on hot coals, a wry bit of humor in her pregnant life, where flat shoes would have been a true friend. 8 months pregnant, Emily had sacrificed her promising graphic design career to support her husband, turning these rare date moments into her only source of joy amidst exhausting days. She had given up creative projects and late-night sketching to become the ideal wife, cooking, managing schedules, and smiling through Alexander's late-night calls with excuses of urgent business. Now, stepping into the Galleria, Houston's most luxurious shopping mall, with its twinkling lights and lively chatter from bustling crowds, Emily clutched her pregnant belly, feeling her active baby share her excitement. The gentle kicks from within seemed to whisper, "Mom, today's going to be amazing." Emily had spent the entire week anticipating this moment, a simple lunch date amidst Alexander's hectic schedule. She had even taken time to carefully apply makeup, choosing a soft blue maternity dress to highlight her green eyes and radiant skin, despite the weight gain that sometimes made her self-conscious. The dress flowed over her new curves, offering a rare sense of beauty in these heavy months. Alexander, as CEO of a leading Texas real estate development firm, was always consumed by million-dollar deals, endless meetings, and extended business trips. Emily understood, or at least convinced herself to understand, because her love for him was genuine, built from their early days meeting in college, when Alexander was an ambitious student with a charming smile. They had been married for 3 years, planning this child as part of their perfect family dream. A sprawling house in Houston's suburbs, a meticulously decorated nursery, and weekend getaways by the Galveston coast. But lately, late-night calls, vague texts, and a creeping indifference had seeped in, making Emily question whether that dream remained intact. As she ventured deeper into the Galleria's lively corridors, filled with the faint scent of high-end perfume and cheerful background music, Emily tried to push aside her doubts. She placed a hand on her belly, whispering to her baby, Dad's going to be so surprised today." The child responded with a series of strong kicks, as if agreeing with her mother's optimism. Emily smiled, imagining Alexander would hug her, compliment her dress, and they'd enjoy their favorite salad at their usual Italian restaurant. But as she approached the Tiffany and Company counter, where the light from dazzling diamonds sparkled like stars, her heart clenched. There stood Alexander, tall and imposing in an expensive gray suit, laughing and talking with Sophia Lane, his stunning 26-year-old assistant. Sophia, with glossy brown hair cascading down and a tight red dress accentuating every curve, leaned into him with an intimacy that chilled Emily. Her perfectly manicured hand rested on Alexander's arm, and they were intently examining a delicate diamond necklace, discussing its value with the salesperson. Emily slowly approached, confusion spreading like a fog, dimming the smile on her face. The betrayal was unmistakable in every gesture, the way Alexander whispered in Sophia's ear, her radiant smile, and the undeniable intimacy between them. This wasn't the first time Emily had suspicions. Late-night texts, the strange scent of perfume on his clothes, but now it was public, in front of an oblivious crowd. She called her husband's name, her voice trembling, almost lost in the surrounding noise, but Alexander turned with irritation instead of warmth. Sophia smirked, boasting that the necklace was a thank you for her extra hours, her tone so fake it felt like a stab to Emily's heart. Alexander admitted that Emily had become useless since her pregnancy, as if their unborn child was merely a burden. The brutal truth left Emily frozen, her blood rushing to her ears, and the baby kicked harder than ever. But would Emily silently swallow her pain? Or would this confrontation ignite, dragging you into shocking secrets that will leave you breathless because if you walk away now, you'll regret missing the fateful twist that lies ahead? From that frozen moment, when Alexander's betrayal shone as glaringly as neon lights in the Galleria, Emily felt the world around her shrink to the pounding of her heart and the fierce kicks from the baby in her womb, as if reminding her she wasn't alone in this pain. Her voice echoed through the clamor of the shopping mall, drawing curious stares from the crowd, housewives with designer bags, young couples, and store clerks pretending to be busy, as she shouted the most agonizing question: how long had Alexander been sleeping with Sophia? Sophia, with a cruel smile curling like a sharp blade, answered in a falsely sweet tone, declaring that the time was long enough for Alexander to realize what he'd been missing at home, a biting remark, as if Emily were just an old relic in the garage while Sophia was a sleek new sports car. Alexander didn't push her away. He even let Sophia's tiptoe kiss graze his lips right in front of his wife, a public gesture so blatant it carried a dark humor, like a scene from a terrible sitcom no one could laugh at. Emily felt her chest shatter, a piercing pain radiating from her heart through her entire body, forcing her to grip a nearby bench to keep from collapsing. Her baby kicked frantically, as if offering comfort, its chaotic movements inside her belly, mirroring the chaos erupting outside, a bitter chuckle in her mind that at least this child was participating in the family drama more actively than its father. Robert, a security guard in his 50s with a weathered face, eyes deep with the weight of countless life tragedies, and a name tag reading Robert glinting under the lights, had been watching the scene from near the mall's directory board. He approached with genuine concern, his steady presence like a wall shielding the trembling pregnant woman from the turmoil. Alexander, his face flushed with anger and shame as the crowd grew, grabbed Emily's arm roughly, his fingers digging through the fabric of her maternity dress, hissing that enough was enough, that she was embarrassing him in front of everyone, a haughty threat, as if his CEO status could erase his wrongs. As Emily struggled to break free, her maternal instincts urging her to protect herself and her baby from this toxic air, Alexander's response was swift and shocking, making the crowd collectively hold its breath. The slap rang out like a gunshot in the mall's corridor, causing Emily to stagger back, her hand flying to her burning cheek while the other clutched her belly protectively. Her baby responded to her anguish with frantic movements, as if reminding her that life persisted through the pain. The crowd erupted in panic, shouts of "assault" and "call the police," rippling through, turning the scene into a public drama no one wanted to star in. Robert intervened immediately, his voice carrying an unmistakable command, demanding Alexander release her at once while calling for backup on his radio with the professionalism of someone seasoned in crises. Alexander threatened with his usual arrogance. He was Alexander Sterling, CEO of Sterling Developments, who employed half the city's contractors, daring anyone to challenge him over a family dispute, a statement laced with bitter humor, as if money and power could buy justice itself. But Robert stood unflinching, positioning himself between Emily and Alexander, his steadfast presence offering a sliver of comfort amid the chaos. The police arrived swiftly, patrol car lights flashing outside the main entrance, while the crowd filmed with their phones, turning Emily's humiliation into viral content. Alexander and Sophia tried to spin a tale, painting Emily as unstable, a paranoid wife stalking them for weeks, a desperate attempt to twist the truth, but the witnesses had seen their cruelty clearly. Emily sat trembling on the bench, cradling her belly, wondering how her life had come to this, from a devoted wife to a victim of public betrayal. Robert stayed by her side, comforting her with a gentle but firm voice, making her feel safe for the first time that day. But was he just an ordinary guard? Or was a greater secret waiting to be unveiled, urging you to keep watching because if you leave now, you'll regret missing the fateful twist that could change everything? Dear audience, grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and keep listening to the story. The twists are still to come. And please drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world. Drop a 1 in the comments if you find this story gripping, so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. In the cold, white light of the emergency room at Houston General Hospital, Emily Harper lay motionless on the hospital bed, her weary eyes fixed on the ceiling, where fluorescent lights flickered like the faint pulse of her heart. Having just endured the nightmare at the Galleria, the sting of Alexander's public slap still echoed, leaving her cheek burning, but the betrayal cut deeper than any bruise, a wound that left her trembling. The doctor, with a calming voice, confirmed the baby was stable, but Emily's high blood pressure from stress meant she had to stay for monitoring. Her unborn child, as if sensing its mother's pain, continued to kick gently, small movements like a whisper of hope on the edge of despair. Robert, the security guard with a weathered face and eyes so deep they seemed to hold an untold novel, didn't leave like a typical guard. He stood in the corner of the room, coordinating with medical staff, in a low, steady voice, as if he were no stranger to chaotic situations. Most peculiar of all, he mentioned Olivia, Emily's sharp-witted lawyer sister in Austin, Texas, without needing any information from her, as if he had long known her family's story. This oddity jolted Emily, exhausted as she was, into a moment of sharp clarity. She stared directly at Robert, a man who, just hours ago, was merely a name tag in the crowd, and a strange feeling stirred a gut instinct that he was more than a passerby. With a trembling but resolute voice, she pressed him about his true identity, each word like a needle piercing the veil of secrecy. Robert sighed, his shoulders sagging as if carrying the weight of a decade, then sat beside her bed, his gaze tender yet heavy with remorse. He revealed a truth that pulled Emily into a whirlwind. He was Robert Harrington, her biological father, the billionaire behind Harrington Enterprises, a financial empire that once dominated Silicon Valley's tech industry. 18 years ago, he had abandoned his family, consumed by a work addiction, leaving Emily, Olivia, and their mother, Margaret, in Houston to chase million-dollar deals and the glow of fame, a choice he now, in his humble security guard uniform, called the biggest mistake of my life with a bitter chuckle, as if mocking his own youthful folly. Robert recounted how, after leaving, he had secretly kept tabs on his daughters through anonymous letters, funding Olivia's law school scholarship and securing Emily an internship at a prestigious design firm, quiet acts he hoped would be a first step toward redemption. His job at the Galleria was merely a disguise to stay close to Emily, watching her from afar, waiting for a chance to return. Yesterday, when he saw Alexander slap her in front of the crowd, his fatherly instincts overpowered any fear of rejection, compelling him to step in, no longer a stranger but a protector of his daughter. even if it meant shattering the cover he had so carefully built. Tears streamed down Emily's face as she listened, shock mingling with anger, choking her voice. This was the man who had abandoned them, leaving her mother to raise two sisters alone through long, lean nights and fatherless holidays. Robert explained that Margaret had given him an ultimatum, forcing him to choose between family and work, and he had chosen wrongly. Over the past 18 years, he had changed, abandoning lavish parties to rediscover life's true meaning, a journey he wryly described as from billionaire to guard, just to learn how to be human. Olivia, alerted to the crisis, rushed from Austin to the hospital, her short, neat hair and piercing lawyer's gaze unable to hide her confusion upon facing Robert. At first, she lashed out, condemning him for his years of absence, but when Robert knelt before her, his voice breaking with tears, Olivia couldn't hold back, embracing her father in a hug filled with pain and forgiveness. Emily, still on the hospital bed, felt her heart torn between rage and hope, a faint glimmer that their family might heal. The twist of this secret billionaire father, like an emotional bombshell, left her reeling but opened a door to hope amid the wreckage. Her baby kicked softly, as if agreeing with the change on the horizon. But would Emily and Olivia find it in themselves to forgive the past, or would Robert's return only shatter their family once more? If you walk away now, you'll miss the answer to this fateful secret, a story that will keep you glued to the screen. In the dim, ethereal light of the courtroom at the Houston courthouse, Emily Harper sat upright on the witness stand, her eyes resolute but her hands trembling as they cradled her pregnant belly. Where her unborn child kicked steadily, like a drumbeat of triumph amidst a storm. The public slap from Alexander at the Galleria, his cruel betrayal with Sophia, still cut into her heart like a knife, but today she was no longer the silent, enduring wife. Across from her, Alexander Sterling, once the arrogant CEO of Sterling Developments, now sat with his head bowed at the defendant's table, his expensive suit unable to mask the panic in his eyes. Robert Harrington, the billionaire father who had once vanished, stood behind her like a steadfast shadow, wielding the power of Harrington Enterprises to silence the tabloid stories that tried to paint Emily as a delusional wife. Olivia, Emily's sister, entered as her lawyer, her short, neat hair and razor-sharp gaze, ready to turn this trial into a battlefield for justice, a moment that American audiences, with their fierce love for tales of justice prevailing, would surely be glued to. The trial began with a tense atmosphere, like a Hollywood movie reaching its climax. Olivia, with the calm of a seasoned legal warrior, presented irrefutable evidence. Alexander had drained their joint bank account, funneling millions into a secret account to fund lavish vacations with Sophia at a Malibu, California villa where they partied and laughed over Emily's pain. Security footage from the Galleria capturing Alexander's brutal slap played on a large screen, prompting outraged whispers from the jury. Witnesses from Tiffany and Company, employees to shoppers described the assault as an indelible stain, tarnishing the polished CEO image Alexander had crafted. Sophia, her smug demeanor gone, confessed to their plan to abandon Emily after she gave birth, leaving her penniless, a scheme so callous it silenced the courtroom, as if the very air grew heavy with disdain. Olivia, with a touch of biting humor, called their plot the dumbest love scam in Texas, drawing faint smiles from a few jurors, though their eyes remained icy. When called to the stand, Emily felt her heart pound, but her voice rang out clear, no longer trembling. She looked straight at Alexander, not with hurt but with newfound strength, declaring that domestic violence was never acceptable, that she and her child deserve respect. Her words, like a smoldering flame, ignited empathy in the courtroom, especially among the women on the jury who had witnessed or endured similar pain. The court sentenced Alexander to 5 years in prison for assault and financial fraud, stripping him of all assets, a just outcome that American audiences, who relish stories of villains getting their due, would cheer for. But as the gavel struck, a sharp, wrenching pain hit Emily, making her clutch her belly, her breathing ragged. She went into labor right in the courtroom, as if her child wanted to witness the day justice was served. Rushed to the delivery room at Houston General Hospital, Emily, amidst the pain, felt a spark of hope, and then she gave birth to Lily Rose Harrington, a little girl with eyes as bright as the Texas sky. On the very day Alexander was locked behind bars, Robert, standing by her bedside, held his granddaughter for the first time, his eyes red with tears like a father rediscovering his purpose. He whispered a promise never to fail Lily or Emily, a vow he had broken with his family 18 years before. Olivia clasped her sister's hand, her eyes shining with pride, as if they had weathered a storm together. Exhausted but resolute, Emily felt a new strength rising within, not from revenge, but from realizing she deserved a better life. Little Lily, with her tiny breaths, was a symbol of rebirth, a reminder that even the darkest days could lead to light. But could Emily truly build an independent life, or would the shadows of her past keep haunting her? If you walk away now, you'll miss this peak emotional journey, a story that will keep you riveted to the screen. Under the radiant sunshine of Beverly Hills, California, Robert Harrington's sprawling estate emerged like a serene painting, with vibrant rose bushes blooming and the cheerful chirping of birds blending with the sea breeze from the Pacific Ocean. Emily Harper stood on the balcony, cradling little Lily Rose Harrington in her arms, feeling her daughter's tiny breaths as a reminder that life, though once shattered, could still be rebuilt. Just weeks after the trial in Houston, where justice had punished Alexander, Emily, along with her sister Olivia and mother Margaret, had flown to Los Angeles to reunite with Robert, the billionaire father who had once vanished, now a guiding light through their darkest days. The mansion, with its shimmering glass walls and luxurious interiors, was not just a symbol of wealth, but a place witnessing the healing of a family once torn apart by past mistakes. For American audiences who cherish stories of family reunions and redemption, this was a moment they couldn't tear their eyes from, a new emotional chapter in Emily's journey. Robert, dressed in a simple button-up shirt instead of his old security guard uniform, proved his transformation not just through words but through small, heartfelt actions. He held Lily, singing lullabies to her in clumsy but sincere melodies, making Emily smile faintly, a gentle touch of humor as she thought how a billionaire who once ran a tech empire now fumbled with a nursery rhyme. He spent hours playing with his granddaughter, building wooden toy castles in the garden, and patiently listening to Emily's stories about her design dreams. Unlike Alexander, who once controlled every facet of her life, Robert offered support without imposition, suggesting he fund a design company for Emily, but quickly stepping back when she declined. Emily, with a fire of determination rekindled after her pain, rejected the offer to buy an established firm. Instead, she launched Harrington Design Solutions in Los Angeles, a company dedicated to empowering women entrepreneurs, turning creative ideas into reality, a mission that resonated deeply with American audiences, especially women, who felt a profound connection to her journey of independence. Margaret, Emily's mother, appeared with silver hair flecked with shimmering strands, carrying the calm of someone who had endured years of hardship alone. She revealed she had secretly been in contact with Robert for the past year, testing him to prove that family was now his top priority. Margaret shared that after he left 18 years ago, she had raised Emily and Olivia with fierce love, yet her heart always held a space for the husband she once cherished. Robert's return, though belated, was an answer to her long nights of prayer. Robert, his eyes heavy with remorse, confessed that his work addiction had robbed him of precious years with his family. He once believed money and fame would bring happiness, only to realize, with a wry, bitter chuckle, that a billionaire without a family is just a lonely man in an expensive suit. Now, he put his children and grandchild above all, forsaking lavish parties to spend time pushing Lily on a swing or listening to Olivia recount her legal battles. Lily, the little girl with eyes as bright as the Texas sky, grew up in the warm embrace of her newly mended family. Her innocent laughter echoed through the garden like a melody healing old wounds. Emily, who had once lost faith in herself after Alexander's betrayal, gradually rediscovered her strength through design sketches and meetings with young women entrepreneurs. Olivia, with her sharp intellect, became the sister who constantly reminded Emily of her inner resilience. The entire family, through tears and embraces, learned to forgive not just Robert, but themselves, for the years lost to pain. But would Emily truly achieve the independence she craved, Or would the shadows of her past silently return to threaten her newfound happiness? If you turn away now, you'll miss the inspiring conclusion of this journey, a story that will leave you longing to see what happens next. 1 year later, the gentle August sunlight bathed the lush green lawn of the Beverly Hills estate, where the innocent laughter of Lily Rose Harrington echoed like a melody of hope among the wildflowers swaying in the breeze. Emily Harper stood there, her eyes sparkling with pride as she watched her daughter take her first wobbly but determined steps on her first birthday, tiny feet faltering yet resolute on the soft grass. The family gathered around a wooden outdoor table, adorned with pastel balloons and a fragrant vanilla-frosted cake, a perfect scene that, just a year ago, Emily could scarcely have dreamed of amidst the wreckage of Betrayal. Robert, Olivia, and Margaret, each bearing the scars of their past, now smiled together, as if time had stitched shut the tears in their hearts. For American audiences, captivated by stories of fresh starts and the strength to overcome adversity, this moment was an emotional pinnacle, a conclusion that would compel them to share this story across platforms from YouTube to X with the hashtag #NewBeginnings. Emily, once the wife who endured Alexander's control and betrayal, now stood firm like a lighthouse weathering a storm. Harrington Design Solutions, the company she built from scratch in Los Angeles, had become a beacon of independence, empowering dozens of women to turn their ideas into reality. From small fashion brands to innovative tech projects, each sketch she completed, each meeting she led, was proof of the inner strength she once thought lost. Olivia, with her sharp intellect and compassionate heart, opened a law office in Santa Monica, dedicated to supporting victims of domestic violence, transforming her family's pain into a fire for justice. She frequently appeared on local talk shows, sharing her sister's story as an inspiration, resonating deeply with American audiences who connected with her mission to protect the vulnerable. Robert, the billionaire father who once lost himself in fame, had become a devoted grandfather, spending afternoons pushing Lily on a swing or telling fairy tales with a slightly shaky voice. An endearing clumsiness, Emily secretly dubbed Grandpa 2.0, a touch of gentle humor that made the family chuckle, a moment of lightness amid deep emotions. Margaret, with her silver hair flecked with shimmering strands, sat quietly observing, her eyes glinting with contentment as she watched her daughters and granddaughter grow in love. She had once been a single mother carrying the weight of the world, and now Robert's return felt like a belated miracle. Robert, his heart schooled by costly lessons, rejected invitations to rejoin high society to prioritize his family. He confessed, with a hint of wry humor, that he once thought a boardroom meeting could replace a family hug, but now he understood nothing was more precious than Lily's laughter or evenings spent talking with his daughters. Their family, through tears and embraces, had found forgiveness not just for Robert's mistakes but for themselves, for the years lost to pain. Lily, with eyes as bright as the Texas sky, became a symbol of hope. Each step she took a testament that it's never too late to start anew. Emily, in a quiet moment beside Lily, felt a new strength not from her victory over Alexander, but from realizing she deserved love and respect. She shared a powerful message, like a call to millions of women watching. If you're in a relationship that makes you feel small, isolated, or afraid, that's not love. You deserve safety, dignity, and sometimes the worst moments are the doorway to the most beautiful transformations. Emily's story, from a betrayed wife to a mother and entrepreneur, was living proof that inner strength could triumph over any adversity. As Lily laughed loudly, running across the grass with tiny arms outstretched, Emily knew she had found light after darkness. And you, my dear audience, brace yourselves for the next twist in this jaw-dropping story. So, before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're truly loving what I'm doing here. And drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a thrill to see who's joining us from all corners of the globe.